I'm Eric Olson with Smart Pot Fabric Planters, and this week our guest on the Growing Revolution is Danny Murr-Sloat, founder of AlpinStash, and he's providing consulting services and plant genetics for the cannabis industry. He's been a longtime fan of using Smart Pot containers, and we wanted to get him on the podcast to talk about his career. So, Danny, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for your time. So I was reading into your background on your website and saw that you first started using cannabis to help combat some severe stomach pains. How old were you then? And were you anti-cannabis prior to getting your med card back in 2009? And then can you describe what the effects do for you and your condition?
Yeah, so I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and that's where I was born and raised. If you're all familiar with the area, it's definitely kind of like a more hippie area. So I was never opposed to cannabis, and growing up in high school, I definitely smoked and had a good time there, and then kind of stopped, kind of after high school. Shortly after I turned 21, I woke up with terrible stomach pain, was hospitalized and released from that with the script for pain medication. Kind of went down the doctor rabbit hole, gastroenterologists, neurologists, trying to figure out where this kind of lingering pain was coming from. I ended on a physiatrist as pain doctor, and this is, kind of 2003, 2004, height of the opiate epidemic. So I go see this physiatrist, this pain doctor, and my first appointment, he said, do you want this little hammer for pain control or do you want a big hammer? And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be in pain, so, take a big hammer. And I left that appointment with the script for fentanyl, instant release, and a patch form. So the next number of years, kind of between the ages of 21 and 28, 29, I just kind of sunk deeper and deeper into like a opiate and medicated haze. It's interesting looking back. I had a lot of faith in doctors and the medical world. I had terrible asthma growing up, and the doctor that I saw that treated me was just phenomenal. And so I just kind of had total faith in Western medicine. And what I learned in retrospect now is, just like people, there are some doctors that are fantastic. There are some doctors that are really just in it for money. And then, vast majority are kind of somewhere in between. And unfortunately, this one that I saw for pain medication was just in it for money. So, just kind of kept increasing the dose. And pretty soon I was on medication for side effects of the medication for side effects of the medication, that I was taking originally for pain. In that time frame, I developed a nerve impingement issue in my neck. That led to like 30% nerve damage in my arm. And I actually believe that was caused by, I was taking so much pain medication. I was like in bed for 16, 18 hours sleeping. And I think I just, over time, just compressed the side that I was sleeping on. So I had to have a series of surgeries for that. Fortunately, now that's cleared up. And then I also kind of at the tail end of all of this, I had a non-cancerous base of skull tumor, which had a pretty decent surgery. So through this time period, they just kept ratcheting up the pain medication. And I did the math at one point. In a 24-hour period, I was on like about 3 or 4 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. So it was just kind of, always in my system. And the insidious thing is when you're in that, you don't realize how far you're gone, like how far your judgment's gone, how messed up you are. In my head, I felt like I was normal, had a job, driving, so interacting socially, all these things that, now when I look back on it, it was the upside down world. It was just crazy. So in 2009, my dad came to me and cannabis had been legalized medically here in Colorado. And he said, Danny, I think that you should try this. You can go see a doctor now and get a prescription. I think that you should try this. It's so interesting. I feel like cannabis is sort of the antithesis of opiates. And so when I was in this opiate haze, I had tried cannabis a couple of times, but I had always had this bad experience. Either paranoia or nausea, vomiting, just it just was not good. So I had steered away from it, and so kind of I was hesitant to try it in 2009 when my dad suggested it, but I eventually was like, I have nothing left to lose. I'm just stuck here. So I went and got my medical card, and even though I got it in September, I still held out until about November when one of my best friends growing up had kind of come back into my life, and he was a big consumer, and he was really encouraging me to try cannabis again, and he was like, listen, I'll be there with you, like, we'll go do fun things, this will be good. And so with him, whose name is Evan, and I decided, hey, okay, I'll try. And almost immediately I found pain relief uh, for the first time, like true pain relief for the first time in, that 8 years or so that I had had all these medical issues. All the opiates, they kind of maybe dull it or help you disassociate. But for me, it was just always this constant gnawing pain. Um, and so pretty quickly after I started ingesting, I was able to just wean myself off these pain medications. I got free with my first purchase clones. I had always found gardening very therapeutic, and I began to notice the medicinal benefits of cannabis. And I thought, hey, I'm gonna take care of these clones and see where that goes. And gardening became my reason. Growing these plants became my reason to get out of bed. Became something that I was doing that was physical. I didn't know what I was doing growing wise. I, had a 1,000-watt light in a tiny tent, and it was just, 95 degrees, and I was sweating my ass off, and I began to lose all this weight that I had put on, about 60 pounds that I had put on in this time frame. And between ingesting cannabis and cultivating cannabis, I came out of this funk. I got myself off all the pain medications, and then all the medications for the side effects. And to my surprise, my pain started going away. And what I learned later on is that if you take opiates for chronic pain, especially muscle pain, and this is not for everybody, but this was for me, can actually begin to make that pain worse. And especially if you become so sedentary. I mean, I spent 3 or 4 years pretty much just either in bed or on a chair in front of a computer. And so that messes up your body. And so all my pain became worse. And so when I got off all the pain medication, was moving, was re-engaged with life, was mentally re-engaged with life, and kind of spiritually re-engaged with life, uh, everything began to improve. And so I credit cultivating cannabis with saving my life. It was ingesting cannabis certainly, but the cultivation part was as important for me as ingesting. Um, I didn't really have a career path at that time. I'd spent most of my 20s in this this upside down world, and so I saw for myself this idea that if I can really get good at this, that this could be a career path for me. And so I just dedicated myself to cultivation and learning how to do it, and genetics, and later on breeding, and just doing it in a commercial setting too.
Yeah, getting off opiates is, from what I hear, is no easy feat. And also, I've heard that opiates really mess with your digestive system as well. So it kind of makes sense that it really didn't help you. It just kind of masked the pain. That's a beautiful story that you're able to use cannabis to kick the bad drugs and get relief. Um,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so shortly after you started growing, I understand you started working at a grow store locally. Where did you work, and what kind of knowledge did you gain there?
Yeah, so I started growing in 2009. By 2010, I got my first job in the industry at a cultivation facility. It was really early days, and it was really terrible. Uh, just everything about it was unprofessional, and it was not a great experience, especially professionally. So I saw the writing on the wall there. I quit that job. I decided to go to school for horticulture, and then got a job at my local grow store in Louisville, Colorado. It was a place called Victory Hydroponics. Um, and, that was paramount to my just experience in the industry and my knowledge. Having worked both the cultivation side, hands-on plant side, and then also the equipment and grow store side of things, it's just broadened my knowledge base so much. And I was so thankful for my experience at Victory. It was just a small independent grow store. I was friends with the owner and the manager. They were some of my really close friends. My buddy Evan, who I mentioned earlier, he worked there too. So it was kind of just a very like a family place. And since it was independent, we didn't have an agenda. A lot of the big commercial grow stores are trying to sell certain products or certain brands, and that was not how it was at Victory.
Yeah, the grow shops are definitely kind of like the library of hydroponics knowledge. I'm sure working in the store, you have customers coming in and giving tips, and you can kind of sort out whether those tips are good and bad, and kind of take, the best of the best and put it into your own arsenal of techniques, I suppose. So, when did you start AlpinStash, and can you describe kind of like the first few years of the recreational cannabis market and maybe some lessons learned of what you would have done differently then?
Sure. So I started AlpinStash. Evan and I started AlpinStash at the time in 2014, and we were one of the first standalone rec grows. For a long time. It had to be vertically integrated in Colorado, so we were able to break off and be. Initially we were vertically integrated with a edible company, and then we kind of were able to break off into our own. Um, right away for us, I started breeding there. I wanted to create genetics that were what I was looking for and that worked well in a commercial facility. And I wanted to just avoid the potential to open us up to, pests and pathogens by pulling clones in from other places. Because at that point, by the time we opened AlpinStash, I had worked in a couple of grow facilities and had been in a lot of them, a lot of commercial ones, and had just seen the crapshoot that it was at that time. Um, it was so interesting for us at the beginning there because we had to sort through, banking and tax issues. Initially in Colorado at that time, the excise tax that we paid as a wholesale facility was based on the average price per pound that the state gathered data on. And they would set that for 6 months in advance. So sometime in December, they would say January to June, the average price per pound we project is X. And so we had to pay tax on our sales, regardless if we sold above that or below that. And obviously, if you sell for more than that, it's a win. But as a new company, we often had to sell for below that. So, there was a lot of hits that we took there as just a brand trying to establish ourselves in a market that was still evolving. And since then, they switched to, excise taxes based on the actual sale price of the flower. So, a lot of the lessons that we learned, was a big adjustment going from, various degrees of, basement growing experience in commercial facilities to just running our own, and certainly on the business side, running our own business and having to do all that was probably the biggest adjustment. So if I was to give advice to somebody now, if they came in and they said, okay, listen, I got the cultivation side down, what advice would you have? I would say, uh, dive into the business side. If you're in school, go after economics, microeconomics. That's just such a learning curve. And, one saying that really stuck with me too is, if you want to bake, don't own a bakery. So if you're going to be a small independent cultivation facility, and if you're going to be the owner and your goal is to just grow, be the cultivator, like that's only going to be a small portion of what you have to do. Uh, so, perhaps find somebody you can work with that will cover the business side, or just be prepared for that. Because I certainly wasn't.
How many lights did you have going back in the day?
At AlpinStash, we had, let's see, we had 2 rooms in each room there was 15, 315 watt fixtures. And then we had a big room that had, it was probably around 40 fixtures that we kind of alternated between the 315 watt CMH and 750 double-ended HPS lights.
Yeah.
So by commercial standards, that was fairly small. Initially, we were about 2,600 square feet. We did a bit of an addition and bumped us up to about 3,000 square feet, all in facility, not canopy. So it was definitely on the smaller side.
But even still, that's a big enough facility that for one person to do all the growing, it would be tough to do all the other business ends of things. So, yeah, you're only as good as your weakest link on the team. So it's good to surround yourselves with quality people who know what they're doing.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
no, I was going to say I definitely, had to sort through that. That's one thing I did learn, um, was, how much you have to sort through people to find quality folks, especially if you have sort of a mission statement or a goal in mind. You want to find somebody that's got good plant sense, somebody that's trustworthy, somebody that has a good work ethic, somebody you can work with, because at that size, a 3 or 4 person team, you've got to be around the people that you hire all the time. And so, by the end of the licensed facilities journey, we had a really solid team. Uh, my wife, she ran it with me, co-owner towards the end there, and we were able to get a really strong team together. And I'm still in touch with them today.
Nice, nice. So, Danny, how did the pivot to cannabis consulting occur, and what do you like the most about that role?
Yeah, so I started consulting pretty early on. It was kind of more informal. I did, probably, you know, tens of hours of consulting that was just hoping it would pan out to a paid gig, pretty informal. Eventually, I began to focus on this as a way to just augment income and something that I really enjoyed doing. And 2018, 2019, I started AlpinStash Consulting. In 2020, I got some fairly large size clients. I later that year in 2020, I began talking with SNDL, Canadian-based corporate cannabis entity. They brought me out there to Canada, SNDL, in 2021, and I actually left that consulting gig with a job opportunity, job offer. So moved. My wife, our kid, my wife was 5 months pregnant. We all moved to Canada. Took a job there as the director of cultivation. So I went from a 3,000 square foot facility to a 480,000 square foot facility, the largest indoor cultivation facility in the world at that time. Straight indoor. So that really, was a total different approach, total different vibe. Obviously of the big corporate structure and more of that kind of factory farming approach. That facility, that location shut down in October of 2023, and at that time, I kind of reassessed where I was and where we were in life with my family, and we decided to move back to Colorado to be around our family. And I kind of took a minute and decided what I wanted to do in the cannabis space. And I always enjoyed consulting, and now I had all this experience at such a large facility and kind of with the corporate side, and having to take note of costs and just running a large team. And really that became just kind of like highlighted the skills that I had gained. What I really like about consulting is just getting to work with people to help them improve their facility to tackle problems. I really enjoy the IPM side, so helping people deal with pests and diseases and preventative measures and having a scientific approach to that. I also, interestingly enough, at my time with SNDL, I really uh, uh, enjoyed uh, figuring out how to crack this kind of craft at scale nut in the cannabis industry, and doing that with costs in mind. So one of my strengths now is producing cannabis, at a price point that works with the company, and really getting products that they want.
So you stated some pretty large yield increases since taking over the director of cultivation position at SNDL. What were they doing prior to you taking over, and how did you manage such a dramatic turnaround for them?
Yeah, there was definitely a number of things that we worked on to improve. One of the biggest things that I brought there was this concept of canopy management. So that's what I actually believe is kind of the art of cultivation at scale. So it's fully utilizing both your horizontal growth space and your vertical growth space. So you know, uh, filling that space up with the right plant count, the right density of buds, the right structure. It's very easy to have kind of dead spots where you have a cluster of colas on one side and then kind of a blank area next to it, and then so forth. So just like a really even canopy, but also understanding your genetics and where you want how kind of the colas to go. If they're very stretchy, put out kind of small dense buds, you're going to go for kind of one style of canopy. If you've got ones that cull all the way down, you're kind of going to go for another style of like canopy of pruning and density there. um, Also, I was really lucky to work with some really talented cultivators there too, and so I didn't do this all on my own. Increasing water was a big one. There's this, crop steering is a big buzzword, and lots of people have their art of there. And, drybacks can be kind of a controversial topic, but understanding uh, those drybacks, when to do them, for how long, and, how moist you want your plant to be in general in the root zone is really important. And again, just that canopy management, and I can't stress it enough, it really includes density and plant count. And so one of the things that we found over time was that certain cultivars, like a lower plant count room, they like less density, and you really actually can increase your yields by reducing plant count and just kind of optimizing canopy.
Yeah, 100%. I did a interview with a blueberry farmer like a month ago, and he was saying basically the same thing, that he dramatically increased his yields by just pruning his blueberry bushes, same amount of bushes, but just had them pruned properly and increased his yield like 30-40%. Um, where are you at as far as drybacks? You had mentioned drybacks. I've been in facilities where they water every other day. I've been in facilities where they water 12 times a day, and both facilities were putting out great flowers. So where are you on that topic?
Yeah, so at SNDL, in that setting, we grew in Rockwell, and that was an adjustment for me too, because I didn't have a lot of Rockwell experience previous to that. We were running kind of in that 40% moisture content, drying down to 25 to 30, and then kind of bumping it up, depending on whether we wanted vegetative growth or generative growth, and just sort of the structure. And we began to tinker with increasing that moisture content, and we actually found for us that was pretty beneficial. So running our plants kind of closer to a 60% moisture content as opposed to that 40 was really beneficial. The other thing that was really interesting there was we began to experiment with cocoa and peat too. We had a very fancy and high-tech automated watering system, but we didn't have control to the individual plants. So, we throw a container of peat moss in there, like a 4.5 by 4.5 little pot filled with peat moss, and it would get the same amount of water that the rest of the room would get. And so, that was, for that small of a container, like a ton of water. And to my surprise, the plants did actually really well. So, I'd always played around with moisture content in soil plants and peat plants, kind of just at home and at AlpinStash. And I'd always run my plants more on the drier side, and they did really well. But experimenting with these different techniques in this commercial setting, really showed me that these plants, a lot of them can take a lot more moisture, and so today my growing style is a lot more kind of water heavy, I would say.
Cool. Cool. Um, Now, AlpinStash has transitioned from producing flower for the rec market to being strictly a consulting and genetics firm. How are you distributing those genetics? Is that via seed or clone? And what cultivars are in demand right now?
Yeah, so what we do is we have some partners that help us with on the plant tissue culture side. So all of our genetics, they're actually available through traditional cloning with virus testing, or on the plant tissue culture side of things too. I've got a number of unique genetics that I've bred over the years, tailored to kind of the commercial side of things. So, some of the more popular ones, we've got Lemmy Winks, Cookie Confundo, Orange Obliviate. Those are some of my top ones. Sparrow King is a great indica, very beefy, very dense, very frosty. And Emperor's Breath is another one. That one kind of has a garlic and onions, like umami, nose to it. And the model that I'm going with is, I have some genetics that are available that are just more common, and it's just a one licensing tier, but we can get up into uh, like exclusive use or limited use, depending on what my customers want. So we're pretty flexible there, and really just tailoring it to the customer's demands.
Very cool. So I saw that your wife is featured pretty heavily in your social media and website. What's her role with AlpinStash?
Yeah, so she was, as it existed as a wholesale grow, she was, like I mentioned earlier, she was a co-owner, and she was really just, me and her were kind of the face of the company. And she had, just like me, she had a role in everything. She uh, focused a lot on sales, and helped with the social media, but also on the cultivation side and just the general administrative side. These days, with AlpinStash consulting and genetics, it's just me, and I work with, actually, it was our grower at AlpinStash, a buddy named Josh. So me and him kind of run the cultivation, or sorry, the genetics side, because making new crosses, experimenting, gathering data is more than just a one person job, especially if you're kind of just doing it within the home grow legal limit, which I definitely do these days. So Josh is my partner on that side, but the consulting is just me. So my wife has now embraced a career that she's always wanted to do, which was floral ranging, and is super happy in that job.
Nice, nice.
So still working with flowers.
No doubt. Um, so I saw from your social media feed also that you're a smart pot user. So how long have you been growing in smart pots, and what stands out for you as an advantage to growing in a smart pot versus any other growing container?
Sure. So I started using smart pots pretty early on. I'd say probably in 2010. Certainly, working at the grow store, I got to see all sorts of different fabric pots come in, and smart pot has always just been reliable, durable. We've never had any issues, and I know that some of the ones that we've used, or that I've seen people use, that are perhaps a bit more budget friendly, they just deteriorate. You get tears, and they just don't hold up. I mean, we were using at AlpinStash, we were recycling our soil, and we were literally just chopping the root balls out of the center of the pot and just plopping a new plant in.
That's how
And
I do it.
I never had one fall apart. They always held up. And the benefits, the reason why I went to fabric pot in the first place is just a benefit that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with. But when you grow in a plastic pot, your plants, your roots hit the side of that pot, and they just begin to spiral down. And the tip of the root is really what you want, because that's where all the absorption happens. If you've got a really long root, and sure, it can look cool, but you actually have a lot of wasted root growth. In a fabric pot, you get that air pruning, so the roots will grow into the fabric. They'll get hit by air. The tips of those roots will die, but it'll begin to branch. So you get a lot more root tips and just a lot more, absorption, water absorption, nutrient absorption. And really, that's what you want, because at the end of the day, your yields and the health of your plant's going to reflect how much water and nutrients it can uptake. It'll be a limiting factor. If it can't uptake as much, then that's going to kind of be your weakest link there.
Yeah, absolutely. It all starts with the roots. 100%. So recently in the news, federal reclassification happened with cannabis, with many thinking that federal legalization might be around the corner. What do you see happening to the cannabis industry at the macro and micro level if that occurs?
Yeah. So reclassification, I think, there's kind of two paths that I see. One is that, states that are very friendly, like Colorado, and we have a very friendly governor, and it's such a well established industry here, responsible for, you know, tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus jobs, billions of dollars to the economy. I think a state like Colorado might take the approach that, hey, great, but this is still states' rights, so we're gonna, keep on keeping on here. I think that you could see other states that are maybe newly legalized or not as friendly, or are in the process of legalization, might take that Schedule 3 approach. And while there's a lot of medicines in that Schedule 3 category that are pretty inert and harmless, it's still, there are still some medicines in that category that they're controlled substances, right? So that will limit a lot of businesses that will still make things like uh, sales and distribution from unlicensed places. Like, that's still going to be illegal. Interstate commerce could still be affected. So I think, places like that might have to play by the big pharma laws. And what I think will look like in that scenario, it will very much favor the corporate cannabis places, because they have the infrastructure set up, not just physically, um, to kind of pull off a pharmaceutical approach to cultivation, but from an organizational standpoint. What I learned at my time in SNDL is, while I was in AlpinStash, I had to wear every hat. So I had to kind of be, the QA department and the legal department and supply chain department. At a big corporation, your VP of QA, might have 20 years of pharmaceutical experience, and they'll know what to do right away. And so, that's an advantage that a small producer just will have a really hard time working with. Um, and, I think a benefit could be, though, is it could open up uh, to interstate commerce, and hopefully banking will open up, although that seems to be limited. It's a little bit weird right now. They're trying to reclassify it, but they're also not really making headway in the banking department. And so that's, what will happen there is a crapshoot. I hope that whatever happens, it doesn't mess with places like Colorado too much, because a lot of our brands here, they're small growers, they're small facilities, they're small dispensaries, and having the capital to kind of re-outfit your facility to adhere to pharmaceutical standards is a big undertaking. And if that's the case, I think we'll see a drastic kind of bloodbath on the business side. Descheduling is a different story. And I think actually that move, if that happens, if and when that happens, that will actually favor the small producers a lot more than the corporate entities. And I mean, I truly hope that we get there, and I'm optimistic that we will. I feel like in a lot of places, certainly here, it feels like kind of that cat's out of the bag. Like it would be such a blow to the economy, such a political nightmare too, if this industry here, as we know it today, just disappeared overnight. And I think it would be such a blow to the just the tax revenue side of it that like it can't make sense to do it that way. And money talks, and at the end of the day, that's where a lot of these moves come from. And so I hope that at least is helps keep the industry here like it is.
Yeah. I'm highly skeptical that descheduling will ever happen, because I just believe that that would be ultimately a huge blow to the income of big pharma, that they know that that's what would happen if that went into effect. And they're so entrenched with the banking industry that, they sit on each other's board of directors. They know what would happen. So, yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen, unfortunately. Um, Danny, this has been a really cool, informative interview. How can people get in touch with you and follow you on social media and obtain your consulting services?
Yeah. So, the other thing that I want to mention is that the other thing that I'm doing now is actually really beefing up my content creation and my YouTube channel. I have such a passion for cultivation and teaching people to cultivate. It saved my life, and it's just something I want to pass on. So, I'm really focusing on that. And so, what that looks like for me is I've got a couple of Learn to Grow series. One of them is an indoor one. So the goal here is just easy information. Follow the steps that I do. I simplify everything, and I want you to have an easy, successful, and fun harvest at the end of the day. That one that's budget friendly, and really make this a sustainable hobby for you, because it was just so transformative for me. I'm also doing that same approach, but with an outdoor grow. And then the third kind of bucket I'm doing is tours of craft facilities, where I get to geek out with people in the industry, the people that I want to associate with. That I'm a nerdy person. I'm a little bit can be a little bit awkward, and so a lot of the flashy growers today are just not the people that they're just not my style. So I really want to make this approachable and inclusive, and just nerd out with the people that love this plant. So you can check all those out on our YouTube channel. So that'd be AlpinStash YouTube channel. And then our website has all my consulting information and a lot of the information on the genetics that I have. So that would be alpinstash.com. On Instagram at AlpinStash. And then people can always reach out via email. I love interacting with people. I love sharing my passion and my knowledge with cultivation. I love learning too. That's a huge part of this for me. So my email is alpinstashconsulting@gmail.com.
How did you come up with the name AlpinStash?
Uh, a long time ago, a buddy of mine and I were trying to come up with lifestyle brands, and he actually came up with the name AlpinStash. And it's based on this concept that if you live around the mountains and you enjoy being in them, everybody's got their little spot that brings them peace and happiness. And the double entendre with the word stash in there for cannabis is awesome, but it's just that happy place out in nature that just fills you with energy and good vibes. And for me, the other side of my healing journey was the outdoors. I was able to reconnect with my love of the mountains, my love of camping, my love of climbing. And so I always wanted to pay homage to the mountains. And so with my buddy's permission, when we had our brand, we were kind of trying to come up with names, and that one just kind of kept coming up. And it was awesome to give it an actual life, as opposed to just a couple of guys getting high and thinking of cool brand names and cool stickers.
Well, it's a very fitting brand name, especially for, where you're at next to the Rockies. So, Danny, on that note, thank you so much for your time today on the podcast, and thank you for being a smart pot grower and advocate. We definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully someday we can meet in person and connect that way. So until that happens, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.